Love it. Thank you. And thank you, Leah. All right. So again, welcome to this information session on the path of becoming a teacher in California. So as I share with you, my name is Dr. Steve Bautista. I work at Santa Ana College. Besides advising students, I've taught the careers in teaching class for many, many years. This is actually 20 years. This month, I'm celebrating 20 years at Santa Ana College. I've been doing this work for a long, long time. And happy to be able to share what I know with students who are here today. That is my email address and my direct telephone number. So if you have questions and if you have things that you want to share with me, or if you have concerns or specific things you want to chat with me about, feel free to send me an email. All right, so I'll start with kind of context. So this slide that I'm sharing with you was pre-pandemic in January, when the governor was discussing the needs, the funding needs for California and the California teacher shortage. And California has had a persistent shortage of teachers in some areas more than others, both locations-wise in California as well as discipline areas. And we'll talk about those in the next few slides in terms of what discipline areas are the highest shortage areas. But California has had a persistent problem, and we'll talk about some of the reasons why they've had those problems in the teacher shortage areas. So one of them kind of still relates to the recession that we had in 2007, 2008, 2009, when California's teaching force was really reduced due to the lack of a budget, right? So we had a lot of layoffs, a lot of pink slips for teachers, and we never really recovered from that. We are slowly starting to recover from that. But what happened is during those years preceding 2007, 8, and 9, we had a lot of students who were going to college but not choosing to become a teacher because there weren't jobs available. Thankfully, there are jobs that are available. You know, we're about to hit another fiscal cliff for California, but we are actually seeing a rise in the numbers of students who are preparing to become teachers, but again, not at the same speed as it was previously. And this slide also shows that progression of where we were at early in the 2000s to where we are at today. And it's a 70% drop from 2001 to 2018 of students who are pursuing teaching credentials. The other area that we have a persistent problem with in California is attrition. So we have a lot of teachers who choose to become teachers but leave the profession within the first 5 years. And that's a challenge too. And so the challenge with that is a lot of teachers. So we have teachers who are in the field, who are doing this work, but for one reason or the other, they leave the profession. And as you can see from this chart here from 2012, 2013, one of the reasons why is dissatisfaction with the profession, maybe with the working conditions, with sometimes the way teachers get treated. Teachers don't get treated sometimes very well, either in their work site or in their communities, or even in the press. We've seen teachers over the past 5 years go on strike because of working conditions and because of the needs of teachers not being met in the classroom. So that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of attrition. There's a lot of speculation that teachers leave because of the pay, but if you can see there, a lot of the reasons are not because of the pay, it's for other reasons. And this is the other big shortage area that we have in teaching. It is really in the area of diversity. So if you look at the graphs that I presented here, on the left-hand side, you'll see that teaching continues to be a primarily female-dominated profession. And it's like that because it's been like that historically, right? Nothing wrong with that, but we definitely want to try to provide opportunities and inclusion for all groups to become teachers. And so it still remains a very heavily female-dominated profession, with only 27% of teachers who are male. And then also in looking at males of color, I think less than 10% of the teachers in California are actually males of color. So trying to diversify the profession in a number of ways. The box on the right looks at the ethnic breakdown of teachers in California based on the data of 2017 and 18. And even in California, we don't have a very diverse teaching force. You can see it's still 62% white and compared to teachers of color. There's actually, I just was reading a report earlier this week that there are about 10% of districts in California that don't have one teacher of color in their district. And there's over 60% of districts have less than 20% teachers of color. And we know our student population is very, very diverse. And so I think that is another huge area for the teacher shortage, is trying to diversify the teaching profession. We'll talk about the reasons why that's really important as well. And this kind of overlay shows the discrepancy between the diversity of the students and the diversity of the teachers. And we can see there's a huge discrepancy in the numbers of Latino, Latinx students, and the low number of Latinx teachers. So in terms of teacher diversity, as I share with you, there's a big lack of diversity and disparity between the numbers of the students of color in California and teachers of color. So we have 75% students of color in California, whereas only 40% of the teachers in California come from minority backgrounds. And this really hurts, primarily the teacher shortage really hurts students of color for a couple of different reasons. So if we have a teacher shortage, the schools that primarily suffer because of the teacher shortage are those schools that serve low-income students, because they tend to get more teachers who are on emergency permits or on emergency credentials or are substitutes, those kinds of things to serve those students. And then those teachers are less likely to actually stay in teaching. So there's a high turnover rate in those schools, and high numbers of teachers who don't have maybe the full credentials to be teaching in those schools, but they're in there because there's a teacher shortage. So those students get doubly hurt in when there's a teacher shortage. And then the lack of teacher diversity hurts all of our students. So I think representation matters in a number of different ways, particularly in the classroom. So when students can experience and get the opportunity to experience and interact with individuals from different backgrounds, all different backgrounds, it gives them a deeper appreciation and understanding of diversity, and also builds less stereotypes and less biases with students. So there is a lot of data that shows that for students of color, having one teacher of color can have a significant difference in their journey and their pathway of actually going to college. And so it's important that we have teachers that represent the communities that they work in and come out of and understand their experiences as well. And there's also really important that we have representative teachers in the classrooms to really dismantle structural racism in schools and really help end some of the anti-Black racism in society. So schools are places where students come to learn, and sometimes, and historically, schools have built systems that are sometimes punitive to students of color or students of minoritized backgrounds. And some of our practices, and even unfortunately some of our teachers, their practices continue to perpetuate some of those things in schools. And so as educators, we want to be inclusive, we want to be responsible, we want to meet the needs of all of our students. And part of that really centers on first us understanding our own backgrounds and our own educational experiences, understanding something called implicit bias, in which, it's just kind of how we've been socialized, how we've been raised, how we've experienced the world, or how the world, others experience the world, leads to our own biases that we have to identify and then help eradicate when we're working with students of color, so that we're really assisting all learners to be the best that they can be. And then it's also, I think, also really understanding the history of schools and the educational system in the United States, and how it was based and how it was founded, and some of those principles that it was founded on, and then how some of those principles continue to hurt students in schools today. And so I don't have the time to go into that today, but I really encourage you, if you take an education class, or if you have the opportunity to do some research for a research study, really dig deep into the history of the educational system in the United States to kind of learn that background. So it's really important that we have that context understanding, so that we can, as educators, build an inclusive environment for students to thrive. So I put down at the bottom there really some of the terms that are being used now to capture some of this work. We call it culturally inclusive, culturally responsive, inclusive, anti-racist teaching. So there's tons of literature, tons of materials out there as educators we really need to be aware of, so that we can be the best for our students. Okay, so moving on to the areas of high need in California. I shared with you earlier about the teacher shortage, and there are some very specific areas in California are high need. And one of them is bilingual education. If you're not familiar, in 2016, Prop 58 passed, which actually got rid of a previous proposition which opened the door for more bilingual education. And so in schools today, I think we call them dual immersion schools. If you're familiar with those, where students go to school and they learn multiple languages at the same time. They may be a native English speaker, but they're going to an elementary school where they're learning both Spanish and English at the same time. or they may be a native Spanish speaker and going to a school also learning Spanish and English at the same time. But they have these dual immersion schools in multiple languages, in Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. In Orange County, they have one in Vietnamese. So they're truly trying to create produce students who have multilingual skills when they leave our education system. And we might feel that's kind of unique and special in the United States, but if you look at the rest of the world, that's a lot of how they provide schooling. They provide their young children with the opportunities to learn their home language, native language, and English. So we're just trying to catch up with the rest of the world so we can create a population of students who are multilingual and can be more global citizens. So that's a high need area. So if you have second language skills, use them to your advantage in the teaching process and becoming an educator. But if you don't, that's an area you can definitely improve on while you're in college to build up those skills. The second area there is really being able to work and be equipped to work with English language learners. So the ESL and being an ELD teacher. So being able to assist students who maybe his first language is not English, but being able then to teach them and not only the content that you're teaching them, but also the language acquisition skills. And in California, there's actually, as part of your credential, there's something called the BCLAD or bilingual authorization that you can add to your credential. So when you're becoming a teacher, you're going to get a credential. We'll talk about that in just a second. You can add an authorization that gives you the skills and the training to be able to work as a bilingual educator and to be able to work with English language learners, especially trained in those skills. The third area there is math and computer science. Those continue to be a high need area, and they've been historically. Math has been historically a high need area at the secondary level. Computer science is a new emerging area that the state is providing more classes in, and there's a need for computer science teachers as well. Science, secondary English, special education across from infants all the way through adults, working with special populations. Working in CTE. So as a lot of colleges and even high schools have created programs called career technical education to train individuals in specialized skills while they're still in high school or while in community college. There's a high need for teachers of those areas like welding or aviation or manufacturing, all those different areas where we have industry specific skills to be able to teach that in K through 12 schools and even community colleges. And then this has been on the last bullet's been there probably for 10 years, is with teachers' expertise in technology. But right now, as we're all doing, we need expertise in technology. And so it just has emerged. And now as a result of this pandemic and the emerge situation, we have to have teachers who are really skilled in technology. And so hopefully one of the bright sides of this pandemic is that we're all getting more equipped in that area in technology. And then we can use it more effectively in working with our students. So there's a website here, www.teach.california.org, that has a lot of really good information. So you want to jot that one down or take a look at it later, that would be great. So I'm going to pull up there to see if there's any questions in the chat. I haven't been checking to see if there's anything to check on. Sarah?
Nothing in the chat from what I see.
Okay. All right. I see. Am I having a problem with the audio? Is my audio bad?
I asked Sarah, it's going in and out a little bit for me, so I turned everybody's camera off. Again, if anybody needs their camera turned back on, just message me privately.
Okay. Yeah, let me know because I have my AirPods in, and if I need to switch, I can do that as well. All right. Okay. Cool. Thank you. So yeah, feel free to put them in the questions in the chat. I'm happy to pull up and I can answer them as well. All right. So preparing to become a teacher. How do you prepare to become a teacher in California? In California, it's a 3-step process. It begins with the journey of earning a bachelor's degree. So depending on where you're at in that journey, maybe you're starting at community college or at a university already, or you already have a bachelor's degree. But that's step number one. And in California, it's very unique for us in the fact that we don't have bachelor's degrees in education. Other states, Nevada, Utah, Texas, when you go to college and become an elementary school teacher, you get a bachelor's degree in elementary education. You want to become a special education teacher, you get a bachelor's degree in special education. In California, we don't do that. So what we do is we first have you get a bachelor's degree with the emphasis in subject matter in what you want to teach. So for example, if I want to become a high school math teacher, I get a degree in mathematics. If I want to become a high school history teacher, I get a bachelor's degree in history. If I want to become an elementary school teacher, I get a bachelor's degree in something like liberal studies or child development, something that gives me broad academic preparation in all the different content areas. And so that's step number one, is getting the bachelor's degree. So you don't really get a lot of education level courses or experiences in your bachelor's degree program. That's primarily reserved for step number two, where you do the professional preparation program. And so in California, you get a bachelor's degree first, and then you go and get the professional preparation program or the credential program. And that usually happens after your bachelor's degree. It's usually a year long, usually 12 months. And it usually includes student teaching and classroom work. So students who get a bachelor's degree in liberal studies, they'll then spend the next year after that bachelor's degree going through a credential program, doing their student teaching in an elementary school classroom, and also attending classes on all the competencies in becoming a teacher, right? So it's that two-step process. And then they focus on what they call pedagogy, or how to teach. That's how they train you how to teach to the standards, how to write lesson plans, and actually doing it as part of your student teaching and doing that whole clinical experience at that piece. And then after that year-long credential program and you've met all the competencies, there's some tests that you have to take, then you apply for the teaching credential in California. So that's our process. And the credential is what you would get. That's the name of the license or certification that you need to become a teacher in California. It's called the teaching credential. And so that's what our name is for that licensure to become a teacher. Other states call it other things. We call it the teaching credential. The credential is actually issued by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and the CTC, as we refer to it, is this body in Sacramento, and they are elected officials, and they basically, not elected, they're appointed officials, and they make the rules on what it takes to become a teacher. So the representative teachers in the community and UC and CSUs, and they set the rules on what it takes to become a teacher in California, and it's always changing, right? They set the price of how much the test costs, what kind of coursework works, who's approved to become a teacher, all those kinds of things as well. So that's the process of issuing the credential. So when you're done with your program, you're teaching your credential program, what typically would happen is then the university would help you submit the application for the credential to the CTC. And then the state is the CTC is the actual state agency that actually grants you the credential. And then you have to maintain it with the state. The university doesn't grant the credential, the school doesn't grant the credential, it's the state that grants your credential. Just like a doctor gets a license to practice in California, or a social worker becomes a licensed clinical social worker in the state of California, same thing, you become a credential teacher in the state of California, and it differs from state to state. Okay, so these are the basic kind of credentials that most students are pursuing. There's actually a ton of credentials that are available, but these are the basic ones that students would pursue. So I'll throw this into if people want to put into the chat, what kind of teacher do you think gets the child development permit? Or you can say it out if you want to. What type of teacher? Yeah, ECE, early child education, right? So preschool teacher, thank you, yes, thank you. So preschool teachers are the ones who get child development permits. What type of teacher gets the multiple subjects credential? Yes, the elementary school teacher, right? So that multiple subject credential is descriptive of the type of credential that you would be getting if you want to work in an elementary school. And it's typically TK, which is transitional kindergarten, through usually 6th grade, right? And then who gets a single subject credential? Yep, middle school and high school. So if I want to become a middle school English teacher or social studies teacher or high school math teacher, I'm getting the single subject credential. And then who gets education specialist? What's left? Yes, I think I see it. No, not admin. It's for special education. So if my goal is to work with individuals with special needs, then I would get a specific credential as called the education specialist credential. So preschool, elementary, single subject, which is middle school, high school, and then special education. So there's multiple credentials. There's ones for school counselors, for school speech therapists, for principals, for a bunch of other people, but these are the primarily ones that students are getting to become teachers in California, actually work as classroom teachers. So I know a lot of you are thinking about early child education, then we'll talk about that right now. in terms of what that process is like for students who are pursuing to work with really it's 5-year-old and younger, right? So how the state defines the early childhood education field is really preschool and younger. Once you hit transitional kindergarten and kindergarten, that's the multiple subject credential. So this is everything that's below that. So early childhood education is how that's defined. The Child Development Permit, again, is a permit that is issued by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. It's really designed to work with in child development programs. And we'll get very specific with this in just a second. Preschool workers, again, preschool teachers and childcare workers, again, they're working with really young children and even beginning with infants all the way through toddlers and preschool students as well. So these are the different levels of the child development permit. So it's really important if you're thinking about going into this field to understand that the permit structure is leveled beginning at the lowest level permit at the top there, which is something called the Child Development Assistant Permit. So if you start at the top there, it goes assistant, associate teacher, teacher, master teacher, site supervisor, and then program director. So those are the different levels, but it begins at assistant. And you can see right under that, you'll see what the requirements are for each of those different levels of permit. And so the assistant permit requires 6 ECE units. So that's 6 units of early childhood education. Some campuses, that's like our campus, it's not called early childhood, it's called child development. Other schools, it might be called something different, human development. But in the state, it's referred to as early child education units. And we'll talk about what those specifically look like for each of the different permits. And then as you go from assistant to associate, the second bullet, you'll see the units increase. So it's 12 ECE units plus 50 days of experience. So you have more units that are required and more some experience that's also required in order for you to get that permit. And then if you go to teacher permit, it's 24 early child education units, 16 general education units, then there's a specific general education units, and then 175 days of experience. And so it's kind of like a ladder. It begins at the kind of the lowest rank, which is assistant, then you can go associate teacher, and then teacher, then master teacher, and then you could stop at any point. But the level of permit gives you the capacity to be able to work in that setting, depending on what that permit allows you to do. And I have another slide that shares what those are very specifically. So this is a really important matrix if you're going into preschool teaching. It's called the Child Development Permit Matrix. And so I would jot that down. If you just Google it, or if you go to childdevelopment.org, the full matrix is available on that website. But what this shows really, again, it shows those same levels: assistant, associate, teacher, teacher, and master teacher, with all the different options, right? So what I just shared with you is option 1 in that first column that talks about units and experiences that are required. And so there are multiple ways to be able to do that. So, and it also shows you the very last column, what it allows you to do. So again, the assistant has different responsibilities versus the associate teacher, and then the master teacher. So in my experience, a lot of students wait and just get the associate teacher permit. That's like their first level of permit versus get the assistant permit. They'll just get to the 12 units of early childhood, and that's their first permit that they go for, would be the associate teacher permit, because it allows them to do the most. But you could enter at any point. You could enter at the teacher level as well. So again, I would certainly encourage you, if this is your area that you're pursuing in this for teaching, to download this permit, to go to it and take a look at it, and then look at your community college and see what classes meet these permit requirements in terms of courses. At Santa Ana College, I think I might have in the next slide here, these are the classes at Santa Ana College that meet the associate teacher permit, those first 12 core units. It's our 107, our 108A, our Child Development 110, 111A, and 111B. So the good thing about most of the community colleges in the state is that they've actually normed this, the names of these courses. The numbers might be changing, but the names of them are pretty specific. So if you go across your community college and it's named Childhood Growth and Development, you can probably be assured that it counts for that same requirement as well. But at Santa Ana College, it would be these 5 courses. All right, let me pull up there to see if there's any questions on this.
So there.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, there is a question in the chat. Well, it pertained to the credential question. So Is a bachelor's degree from another country valid here in California?
Right. So yes, it can be, as long as it equates to a bachelor's degree in the United States. So typically for students who are prepared outside of the United States, what we encourage you to do is actually on the commission's website, there is a place where you can actually get your transcripts evaluated and transcribed. And then if it equates to a bachelor's degree in the United States, based on that evaluation, then it will work in California.
Okay, then there's another question. Are there any exceptions for experience days because of the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think those there's actually a section on the commission's website that actually deals with that. I don't know what they are, what kind of exceptions that they're making, whether those are completely waiving them or if they can be virtual experiences. I'm not sure if there's any other professors that are on the call here that could chime in there and made a little bit better than I do, because I think there may be some individuals who teach child development who might have signed up. So there could be some exceptions to that. The type of experience that would be required for that permit. But if you go to the commission's website, there's actually a section on COVID-19 and a lot of different rules that they've provided to help candidates who are interested in all kinds of credentials get the experiences that they need. Is that it?
The last question, what's the difference between the credential after you get a bachelor's degree and the early childhood education program that allows you to apply for a credential?
Right. So what I'm talking about now is something called the child development permit. And what the difference is the setting it allows you to work in. So child development permits allow you to work in settings that are working with preschool children and younger, right? And a lot of times this can be done at community college. All this coursework can be done at community college without even getting a bachelor's degree. I know at our school with an associate's degree, you can go all the way through, I think, master teacher at community college. So, but if you want to work in a TK through 12 setting in an elementary school, that requires you to get the bachelor's degree. That requires you to go through a multiple subject or a single subject or education specialist credential program. So the difference is it depends on the setting that you want to go to. Where it gets confusing is that in California, because we have no bachelor's degree in teacher education or in education, we have students who are interested in getting a bachelor's degree in child development. And sometimes that child development bachelor's degree is to work in preschool settings, or sometimes that child development bachelor's degree can lead you to work in an elementary school setting. So I know at our partner university at Cal State Fullerton, when you look at their child development major, you actually see there are, the settings you want to work in would be the major and the bachelor's degree that you would get, depending on the setting, either early childhood or in elementary education settings. That's where it gets a little bit confusing, because we don't have a bachelor's degree called, elementary teaching. Students may choose a child development bachelor's degree, but that could take them multiple ways as well.
Last question is, how does someone attain the permit if they've already met the units needed? Is it through the CTC or somewhere else?
Yes, so it's basically in the application. So on the CTC website, I'll show you at the end, you can go and you can actually apply for the permit. And so it's a form that you fill out, submit the fees, and you can apply to get that permit for sure. Okay. So let's talk now a little bit more about for students who, that was child development. So let's talk more about students who want to teach in multiple subject, get a multiple subject credential, single subject credential, or education specialist credential as well. So a bachelor's degree is required, as I shared with you already. There's something called basic skills competency. So the state of California says if you want to get a credential that allows you to work in K-12 schools, then you have to pass for a competency in basic skills. And so there are multiple ways to do that, and we'll talk about that in just a second. There's a requirement that you pass a test or a course in the US Constitution, and at most community colleges and universities, that course is American Government or Political Science 100 or 101 or 1A, whatever that might be. The same one that's on the GE plan typically will work for that requirement as well. So a C or better in that course meets that requirement. The fourth bullet is something called subject matter competence. So this is pretty huge. So someone who wants to work in an elementary school classroom or a middle school classroom, high school or special ed classroom, they have to demonstrate to the state of California that they are competent in the subjects that are taught in those grades. So we'll talk about that very specifically, but For example, if I'm going to become a high school math teacher, I need to demonstrate that I am knowledgeable to the state of California in all the math that I would be teaching as a high school math teacher. The fifth bullet there is going through a credential program. So although we have pathways that allow you to get like an emergency credential or a substitute, eventually you'll need to go through a professional preparation program to earn the credential, to get all the training that you need in order to actually get the full credential from the state of California. And then if you've ever worked with children, if you've ever worked in a school setting, one of the things you always have to do is you always have to get the fingerprinting for the character clearance. And there's a second thing you normally have to do is a character clearance that you have to, character clearance, and then the TB test. I'm sorry, the TB test is the second thing you normally have to do. Now, sometimes it's a TB screening. Before they used to have to, do the whole shot and come back in 2 days and all that kind of stuff. But they may be now a little bit different. So those are the main things. There are some things along the way we'll talk about, but we'll dig a little deeper into these. I see someone in the waiting room, Sarah and Tanisha. Should I admit them or? Got it. Cool. Thanks. All right. So basic skills competency. So the state of California says, okay, teacher, elementary, middle school, high school, special ed teacher, you have to demonstrate basic skills competency. You have to demonstrate that you're competent in reading, writing, and math. And at the basic skills level, and the basic skills level is really the 9th grade level. And so there's multiple ways that the state is allowing candidates to do this. One is by AP test scores if you did them in high school in math and English. Others are SAT or ACT test scores if you happen to do those while you were coming out of high school and going into college. The other way is by examination. And the examination that you can take if you didn't do the first two options is something called the CBEST, the California Basic Educational Skills Test, CBEST. And that's this bullet on the left-hand side here. It's a reading, writing, and math test that you would take. It costs money to take it. You sign up for it online and we'll give you the website. You can do some practice tests and you have to pass 50 questions in math, 50 questions in reading, reading some passages and then answering questions, and then writing 2 essays. And the essays are normally just 5-paragraph essays on a topic. Sometimes it's really broad, nothing usually specific, nothing like around history or science or math, more like a topical type of opinion. And you would write to those prompts and just making sure you can use proper grammar, spelling, punctuation, and good sentence structure and all those kinds of things. So CBEST is, if you haven't done the other methods, is in your future in terms of preparing to go into a credential program, because the CBEST is usually required for the CBEST, for the credential program, sometime while you're finishing your bachelor's degree. You can take it at any point in time, and once you pass it, it's good for life. So you just have to sign up for it and pass it. It's usually offered multiple times a year. They have computer testing centers where you can take it as well. You can retake it if you need to. If you pass, maybe one section or 2 sections and you need to go back and pass the other one, you can do that as well. But you eventually need to pass all 3 sections of the CBEST. Here's the website. You can actually download a practice website, a practice test on your computer, see sample problems, all those kinds of things as well. And it does cost money. But like I said, once you pass it, it's good for life. There has been some legislation recently to try to alleviate the CBEST, which we're hoping will get passed in the next couple of years, and maybe you won't have to deal with this. So that hopefully if you take a college level English and college level math, that will suffice for, and a college level critical thinking class or reading course, that would suffice for the CBEST. But until then, this is one of the exams that is on your pathway to becoming a teacher. That's called the CBEST examination. Okay, all right, so next slide here. So let me pull up there. Any questions about that? CBEST basic skills? No? Let's see. I see a question. Oh, I think I got that one. Okay. All right. So going on to those students who are thinking about becoming elementary school teachers. So again, the elementary credential, the multiple subject credential, works for TK, typically through 6th grade, where you are teaching basically, if you can imagine the 3rd grade, right? So a 3rd grade teacher teaches it all. They teach language arts, they teach science, they teach math, they teach music, they put on their tennis shoes and they go outside and they teach PE. So they're doing it all. So this multiple subject credential allows you to do and authorizes you to teach multiple subjects to the same groups of students all day long. Subject matter competence is really important for students who are preparing to become elementary school teachers because the state has a pretty wide array of skills that are required for students who want to become elementary school teachers that you have to know, content areas. And these are all of them listed here in terms of what teachers need to know. They're very specific, broad, but there's also very specific areas that you need to be able to cover as part of becoming an elementary school teacher. And we'll talk about how you demonstrate subject matter competence, because that sometimes can be a barrier, but it's also something you can plan into your pathway of becoming an elementary school teacher. So the way a student can demonstrate subject matter competence, a future elementary school teacher, is really two ways the state has right now. I'll talk about option number 2 first, because that's been the pathway for about the last 10 years or so. What it is an exam. So students who are preparing to become elementary school teachers, they get their bachelor's degree, and in that bachelor's degree, they're covering all the content areas. And then before they finish their bachelor's degree, before they go into the Credential program, they're taking the exam called the CSET multiple subjects. So the CSET multiple subjects, first one's called the CBEST, C-B-E-S-T, this one's CSET, C-S-E-T. The CSET really covers all the subject areas that are required for you to understand to become an elementary school teacher. So social sciences, like geography, history, world history, California history, the sciences, physical science, life science, earth science, literature courses, all the different areas, art, music, all those different areas. And so what typically students will be doing is they'll be getting a bachelor's degree in child development or liberal studies. And then towards the end of their bachelor's degree, they're taking the CSET examinations and passing them, and then going into the Credential program to demonstrate subject matter competence. Option number 1 is a newer option, but it's actually a newer, older option, but it's come back. So the state has revised what they call taking something called elementary subject matter preparation programs or waiver programs. And these programs of study, they're actually courses that you would take that instead of the test, if you take this group of courses and you pass all the courses, then you would waive the CSET exam. So there are many universities in our state who have gotten approved to have CSET approved programs, so CSET waiver programs in our area. In Southern California, those I think right now are Cal State LA, I think Cal State Dominguez Hills, I think Cal State Long Beach. Many other private schools have multiple subject waiver programs that students can begin in community college and taking the right courses, continue on at the university, finish the courses, and then waive the CSET examination. So just know that both those pathways exist currently, and there are more schools that are bringing their multiple subject or elementary subject matter waiver programs online. The challenges with those programs is they're very specific. So there are very specific history courses, very specific English classes, very specific science courses, very specific, art, dance, and music courses. So it's pretty prescriptive. And if you haven't followed that pathway since the beginning, you may have taken classes that meet those GE categories, but not the right courses. And so although the pathway could benefit you, it may not make sense to go backwards and take a bunch of classes that you've already taken just to meet the waiver program, when you can just go ahead and take the CSET once you're finished or getting finished with your bachelor's degree. So let me pull up there to see if there's any questions.
I did get one question. Someone was asking, when do you take the CBEST? Is it after you earn your bachelor's degree?
That's a really great question. So you can take it at any point in the journey. And so we recommend students take that as soon as they're done college level English and college level math. So maybe you've done English 1A or 101 and your math for elementary school teachers, or your college algebra, whatever you're doing as for your math, go ahead and take it and then pass it and then be done. The math on the CBEST, there's no geometry, there's no algebra. It's all basic word problems and some basic math. So I would just go ahead and take it once you're done those courses, and then it's good for life. So there's no specific time when you should take it, but you would have to take it normally in order to get into the Credential program. So yes, towards the end of your bachelor's degree, normally that would be the timeline. Take it towards the end of your bachelor's degree as you're applying to the Credential program, and the test scores would be required in order for you to get into the Credential program. Good question. So community colleges have these pathways, the option one pathways, the waiver, elementary subject matter waiver programs. A lot of those classes and programs are part of the associate degree for transfer for elementary teacher education. So if you are new to community college and you're on the pathway to becoming an elementary school teacher, kind of an early decider, then my recommendation is to go to your community college, if you're in a community college, to follow the associate degree for transfer for elementary teacher education, because that often aligns to the waiver programs at the local universities. So you definitely want to work with a counselor, but that would kind of be your first line to be able to get your own self-advising is through the associate degree for transfer for elementary teacher education, because it's very specific. There's, early US history, early world history, earth science for teachers, life science for teachers, math for elementary school teachers. So it's very specific in the course taking, but it also aligns to general education for transfer as well. So that's my recommendation there. And then to work with the counselor, obviously, in terms of planning out your schedule, but that's one place to start to begin putting you on that pathway for the elementary subject matter waiver programs. For those who end up taking the CSET, I give you a little bit of information here. Again, this happens towards the end of your bachelor's degree when you're finishing up all of your courses and you're preparing to go into the Credential program. That's when you would sign up to begin taking the CSET. It's offered in 3 sections. As you can see there, each section costs money. Each section has its own time limit, and some students will take it in sections. They'll, maybe 1 month do section 1, the next month do section 2, the next month do section 3. Some will just go for it and take them all at once and see how they do. And then if they have to go back and redo a section, they can go back and redo that one section. So there's multiple ways to approach it, and there's multiple ways to prepare for it. The best way to prepare for it is taking the right general education classes, or using prep books or whatever that might be. But you can take this at any point in the journey. And again, this typically also has, I'm trying to think, it used to have a 5-year clock to it, but I think they've extended it to a longer period of time now than that. So you can take it early on in your preparation and it would still be valid for the Credential program as well. I'll show you the website where you can download the practice test to see all the content specifications. But yeah, you have to pass all 3 sections in order to fully pass the CSET multiple subjects to go into the Credential programs. Here's some examples of what the test looks like. It's 52, or there's multiple choice questions and short answer response for each of the different areas. And you can see the passing score there as well. And these align to the content areas that are taught in K through 6. So it's really making sure that you have the right content preparation. Here's some information on the cost, how the time limits, and then the 4th bullet talks about the pass rate. So although it sounds like a rigorous examination, the pass rate is pretty high for first-time test takers. So it just takes, because you've had a bachelor's degree, hopefully you've done pretty well in your classes, matter of refreshing and going back and passing the examination. So, so the credentialing course is good for 10 years. So again, you can take it any point in time, good for 10 years. And then, so the 10 years means by the time you pass the first test, you started a Credential program. Not every 10 years you have to take it as a teacher. It's basically as an entry point into the Credential program, the 10-year clock starts and take it, and then you have 10 years to begin the Credential program. All right, how do you prepare for the CSET? Again, when I work with students who want to become elementary school teachers, we really reinforce this idea. You have to have content knowledge in all these different areas. So basically what we do is we kind of plan out your general education to really align to all the specific areas, so that in all the different areas where you're already having to do a physical science, a life science, a math, a humanities, an art, social sciences, we're basically just picking out those courses and preparing and aligning them to what you would need to know in order to prepare for the CSET examination. In the Google folder, you'll see several documents that have those outlined. Like for the Santa Ana College students, we have one that aligns all of the Plan B for the CSUGE to all the CSET courses that we would recommend for students who are preparing to take the CSET and become elementary school teachers. Okay, is there more questions in the chat?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So the first one is, you mentioned that there was like a time limit for the CSET and that the CBEST was good for life. Is there any restrictions on how long ago someone earns a bachelor's degree?
No, there's not. Good question. No, bachelor's degree never expires. Yep.
Awesome. And then the second question is, what happens if you take the CBEST test and you don't pass it? Do you have to pay again to retake it?
Yeah, that's correct. Unfortunately, the testing people have a stranglehold on future teachers, and yeah, so every time you take it, you have to pay the fee, right? So even if you're taking one section, you're still paying for the full cost of the test. And so one of the issues related to why groups of individuals who want to move away from the test is one, because the high stake testing and standardized testing is biased for a lot of populations, but also the cost to prospective teachers. And interestingly, the groups that have led the charge in terms of trying to get rid of some of these exams or creating alternative ways to meet these requirements are student groups, because they see in front of them the cost for the CSET, the cost of the CBEST. But yeah, you would have to pay for taking the CBEST each time, and the same with the CSET. Every setting has a fee.
Aside from the fee, are there any other requirements to take the CBEST?
No, there are no other requirements besides that. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have anything else. Just pay the fee. Okay, so in terms of, I said there's no major called elementary teaching. So this is when I'm working with students about preparing to become an elementary school teacher. What major do I choose? Because there's lots of different options. So for example, so for students who want to go into elementary teaching, there are some popular majors that include things like liberal studies or child analysis and development. Some schools have other majors that prepare future elementary school teachers because they have the content preparation for the credential program. At our local partner, Cal State Fullerton, they also have pathways in human services. They have pathways in both liberal studies and child development. I think at Cal State LA, they have majors in like urban learning. Others have them within Chicano studies or other types of majors. So there's multiple pathways and different majors that CSUs have set up and universities have set up to prepare students to go into elementary school teaching. But you can take anything. So the field is wide open because you'll take the CSET. So I've had students over my 20 years be dance majors, be history majors, be psychology majors, be whatever kind, sociology majors, and still become elementary school teachers because of the CSET. So there's no restriction. They offer lots of opportunities. I've noted a couple at the bottom there from the UCs that are kind of newer: education science, and at UCLA they have one called education and social transformation. These aren't elementary ed majors, but they give you context and history of and some ideas to how education works in the larger societal structures, and could be good training as well for future educators as well. Okay, but it's really important though, as you're planning your college major, that you're working in the classes that are preparing you for the CSET or you're doing a waiver program. So what classes do I take if I want to become an elementary school teacher? I'm doing my gen eds, very specific ones. We use assist.org to help community college students prepare for transfer from one community college to the next university in terms of what classes transfer, and then appropriate education courses. And there are a couple that you could be taking at your community college. At Santa Ana College, we offer 2 education courses. One is called Education 201, Intro to Education, which is a fieldwork-based course for future elementary school teachers. And the second one is a technology-based course for future elementary school teachers, really how to use technology in the classroom. But your college may have something different, some type of intro to ed course that might be available, maybe numbered a little bit differently, but it provides the same type of historical background as well as the field work. And that's why I really encourage students who are preparing to become teachers, field work in whatever setting you can get it, whether it's through a class or through service learning or volunteering, that'll definitely help you in this whole process. At our college, we have a couple certificate programs, so work and after school programs. You don't need these certificates to work in those programs, but these are really good preparation. And again, in talking with future teachers about field work, if you can get a job in an after school program or an extended learning program or in a YMCA or a Boys and Girls Club or some type of program like that, it's really great experience and really great training for future teachers as well. So we encourage that as much as you can. These are some of the organizations in our area that hire our college students: Think Together, Anaheim Achieves, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA. Our school district, our local school district, Santa Ana Unified School District, also hires our employees, our students as well. So look around for opportunities to do this type of work because there usually is a lot of need for these types of workers. Okay, so we're pulling up here for elementary school teachers. Now we're going to be talking about students who are thinking about becoming high school, middle school, and high school teachers. Secondary education. So the single subject credential is that the credential in California that allows you to teach one subject to different students like all day long. So like if I'm a high school English teacher, then I'm gonna be teaching freshmen, I could be teaching, you know, sophomore honors English, all the different subject areas, or math, same thing, algebra 1, algebra 2, you know, trig, pre-calculus, all those different kinds of classes. So you're basically, you know, in that single subject area, working with the different groups of students, but teaching the same subject at different levels. Subject matter competence is also a requirement for the single subject credential, and there's also 2 ways that you can meet that pathway as well. So the state of California says, okay, if you want to teach, you know, high school math, then show us you know enough math to be able to teach it. So there are CSET exams for all the different single subject areas. There's a CSET math, there is a CSET foreign language if you want to teach Spanish, there is a CSET sciences if you want to teach the single subject sciences, CSET English if you want to teach English. So there are multiple ways to, there are multiple tests that you can use to demonstrate subject matter competence at the single subject level, but there's also pathway programs at universities. So for example, at our local CSUs, there are bachelor's degree programs in math with an emphasis in teaching math. And those usually the teaching math emphasis is the waiver program where it waives the test. So, or a bachelor's degree in English with a concentration in teaching English at the secondary level. And that concentration in teaching English at the secondary level is the waiver program. So there are also multiple ways to meet the subject matter competence for a single subject. And usually the pathway is embedded in the bachelor's degree and usually a concentration within that bachelor's degree program. So when you're researching different schools, you can ask the university, hey, if I go to UCI's English program and I do their single subject, or I do their English major with the secondary education concentration, is that a waiver program or not? So that's the way you would distinguish that, but you'll have to do that. But again, you don't have to major in English. So for example, let's say I become I get a degree in engineering, right? And I have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and I decide I want to go teach high school physics. So I could actually go back and do the CSET in physics, pass the physics CSET, and then qualified to be teaching high school physics because I have enough background through my engineering degree and I was able to pass the test. So, okay. Questions there on single subject matter preparation?
We do have one question.
Yeah.
So there's, someone in the chat has an advanced degree, a doctorate in mathematics, and is wondering if there's any sort of waiver for the courses or tests based on advanced degrees.
Usually no. Yeah, not for teaching. That's for the credential. Usually not. Usually you still have to take the test, right? If you want to work and get that single subject credential, you'll still have to do that. There's no, there's not, at this point, there's no waiver program if you didn't do a waiver program already. Like unless the coursework that you took could be evaluated as a waiver by an individual university, that could be the only way, but there's no state way to get around that. Good point though. Okay, so what major do I choose if I want to become a high school teacher? Usually you major in the subject you want to teach. So again, if I want to become a high school math teacher, I major in math. If I want to become a high school music teacher, I major in music, and so on and so on. And so that's the best way if you're in the beginning stages to prepare. That would be the recommended pathway. But you don't have to, again. And then we have some areas where there typically aren't majors in. So for example, for people who want to major in or teach high school history or high school government or high school econ, you can see from the list, there is no credential in that very specific area. They're all lumped together in something called the social sciences. So if I want to teach those areas, I would major in history or government or economics, but my preparation would need to round out and have all the different subject areas that credential allows me to teach, which includes, again, geography, history, science, American government, econ, psychology, and sociology. So a lot of different disciplines I'm allowed to teach with the social science credential. So I need to have broad preparation in that area as well. But yeah, so it's really best to major in the specific area you want to teach. And then that gives you the best academic preparation for the exam or maybe even a waiver program. I've noticed down here that there's actually a couple of different new options coming, a new single subject theater credential and a new single subject dance credential. Previously, those were embedded in other credentials. The theater one was embedded in English, and the dance one was embedded in kinesiology. Now they're being separated out. Okay. So what courses do I take if I want to become a high school or middle school single subject teacher? I do my gen ed, preparing me to transfer, whether it's the CSU plan or the IGETC plan for the UCs or the Cal States or some privates. And then I look on assist.org and I choose the university I want to transfer to and the major I want to transfer to, and I do that list of courses. And then if my college has any education courses, I should take those. And at Santa Ana College, we have 2 courses. We have a fieldwork course called Education 210, and we have a technology course called Education 204. And those prepare students for students who want to work in the secondary school settings. So you'd work with a counselor, we'd kind of map it all out. We kind of create an education plan for you, preparing you for the universities and into the universities programs as well. And again, researching the right universities and the right education programs are important as well. Okay, so I'll pull up there. There's another question in the chat.
Yes, there is a question. If someone wants to get 2 credentials, for example, a history credential and world language English, which I think would be ELD, would they need to double major? Yes,
you could. Yeah, you could. I mean, there's multiple ways to do the preparation for that. One could be getting, dual majors, a double bachelor's degree, or double majoring, but you don't have to because there's CSETs. There's CSETs for both those areas. There's a CSET for social sciences, and there's a CSET for a world language. So what some students would do is sometimes they'll do a major and a minor, right? So maybe they want to do a major in English, but a minor in math. And then at the end of that journey, they could sit for the CSET in both English and then also the CSET in math, and then potentially get qualified to teach 2 single subject areas. So you don't necessarily have to have the double major, you just have to have the academic background and preparation to be able to pass the CSETs for those different single subject areas. Good question. So let's change to the third prong here is working with students with special needs. And in California, that's called the Education Specialist Credential, as I shared with you just a second ago. And the Education Specialist Credential is pretty unique in the fact that it requires you to specialize in working with specific populations, groups of students, groups of disabilities. And so from your slide here, you can see that this Education Specialist Credential is actually a K-12. It allows you to work across all the different areas, the credential. But it asks you to specialize in 5 specific areas. So mild to moderate support needs, extensive support needs. There's one for early childhood for working with preschool children and younger with special needs. There's one for a specialization for working with blind students, and a specialization for working with deaf, hard of hearing. And so what the first 2 really talk about is really dealing with depending on the level of the impairment or the needs of the student. So you could be working with autistic students, but in the mild moderate support needs credential, those students would be a little higher functioning than the students who maybe need in the extensive support needs. They used to call that moderate severe. And so that their needs in terms of accommodations may be different because of the level of disability they may have or the kind of disability they may have. So that's the kind of training that you would get as an ed specialist, is really to work with students who have ranges of disabilities and how to accommodate the curriculum and the learning so they can you can maximize and helping them learn in the best way possible. And I talked about there is actually one for working with preschool children and younger who have disabilities, and maybe they haven't even started school, but they've been diagnosed with a disability early on. Ed specialists who work in early childhood actually work with those kids, those students and their parents, and getting them ready for school. So in terms of the background of a future special ed teacher, the way California has it set up now is that the teacher, ed specialist teacher, has to have the same academic training depending on the setting they want to work in. So if I want to become an elementary special education teacher, then my academics training and the background needs to be the same as the general education elementary school teacher. So I have to have training in the multiple subjects: geography, history, science, math, literature, all the different areas, right? Because my job as an education specialist, credentialist teacher in that elementary setting is I have to have an understanding of that curriculum and modifying it for the students who have special needs. The same thing in working with in the high school level. So usually the ed specialist at the high school level traditionally will have a background in a single subject area and then get trained on how to modify that for specific disciplines. So depending on the age group of the students that you want to work with would depend on your academic training as a future special education teacher. right? Most of the students who want to work with special needs tend to want to work, I think, for my experience, in the elementary classrooms. So we kind of put them on a child development pathway for elementary school settings, or a liberal studies pathway for elementary school settings, or a psychology major with preparation for the multiple subject CSET, those kinds of things. But yeah, so that's the academic training related to working in with students who have special needs. At Santa Ana College, we have another. Oh, let me pull up there to see if there's any questions on special ed. No?
No question.
In the chat. Okay. So at Santa Ana College, you have a program in library technology. It's another area of educators is working. Again, you don't want to be in a classroom, you could be a librarian. Our program allows you to become a library technologist or a library tech. And then you could also pursue a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree in library as well. So there's multiple ways to be an educator. And at community colleges, they have different ways to be able to do that. At our college, we happen to have a program in library technology if you love that area as well. I kind of give you some salary range there. So what does the pathway look like for students who are preparing to become teachers and they begin at a community college? It looks like this. So you start at community college, and between you complete 60 to 70 units. And at our college, 60 is the minimum in order for you to graduate. And it's also the number that you're required to have in order for you to transfer. And so students complete an associate's degree with us in 60 units, complete all their lower division gen ed, complete all their classes for their major, and then transfer to university, and at the same time earn an associate degree. Those students who've completed the transfer pathway then go on to the university. And for most of the CSUs, a bachelor's degree in the CSU is 120 units for you to complete. If you complete 60 at community college, that means you have 60 remaining at the university. And those are typically in a major that you've selected and been applied to and admitted to, whether it's child development or liberal studies, or a bachelor's degree in mathematics, or in English with the area specialization for future teaching in English. So those units are typically done at the university. You graduate again with a bachelor's degree. And then the step after that is going to the credential program. And the credential program is, we call it the fifth year. You know, if you did this all straight through, and you did 4 years of 2 years of community college, 2 years of a bachelor's of a university, and then the fifth year, they call that the fifth year of the credential program. But it's a year long. It's usually typically a 12-month period where you have to be enrolled at a university, and you do student teaching and coursework related to the credential that you're earning. And so what I encourage students to do is be thinking about is that during that time when you're in the credential program, the primary responsibility will be doing student teaching. So you'll have coursework, but you'll also be assigned to a school. If you're on the 16-week semester, for a good chunk of that semester, you're actually going to a school that you've been assigned to, where you're actually doing student teaching. So you're starting with observations, you're beginning to do the clinical practice of teaching courses, teaching the classes, assessing the students, helping the teacher under the supervision of a teacher. So when you're choosing a credential program, my recommendation is to choose something, one, that's closer to where your physical location is of where you're going to be living, because you'll be commuting to a school typically in the same area as the university that you're attending. So for example, in Orange County, Cal State Fullerton is our local partner, and when students go into their credential program, they're typically assigned to elementary or high schools in and around Cal State Fullerton in the surrounding school districts. So you would be assigned to a school there and be going to those schools 5 days a week. If so, just keep that in mind. And then also keep in mind that it's difficult, almost impossible, to work full time while you're doing the credential program. You might be able to work part-time if you have a flexible job, but if you're thinking if you think about student teaching, you do it from 8 a.m. until 2 or 3 p.m. every day, 5 days a week. It's very difficult to have a job during that time and do your coursework as well. So you have to kind of be prepared for that time in your life to where you're not going to have as much income from work. So you may have to either save up, or maybe do a loan, or get scholarships or financial aid or whatever that might be to help you get through the credential program as well. So, and there's different, the credential programs also have different variations, so they're not all the same. Some end at a credential, some will allow you to get a credential and a master's degree combined at the same time in the same program. Others do dual credentials. So I think I saw a question about dual credentials. There are dual credential programs where you can get ed specialist and special ed and a multiple subject at the same time. So they're all different. They're not all the same. So definitely do your research in looking at credential programs, one to where you do student teaching, where you get placed, and then also kind of like what the pathway looks like. And there's all kinds of varying models now that the universities are piloting now for students who want to become teachers. So I'll pull up there, see if there's any questions.
No questions so far.
Okay, all right, good. Either they're really bored or really into it, or I'm explaining things really well. Okay, so I get this question a lot, integrated teacher education program. So there are programs that are in the state of California that combine the credential program and the bachelor's degree requirement. So they call them integrated programs, where they kind of push the two together, so that the 4 years of the bachelor's degree and the 1 year of the credential program get kind of pushed together so that you can complete them all in 4 years, right? So we have several universities in our area that do that, and CSUs that do that, and some independent colleges as well that do that. And basically the advantage is that you're getting out faster. You're more efficient in your course taking, and you're able to graduate with a credential faster than you would if you did the traditional route where you're getting a degree first and then doing the credential program by itself. But there are some challenges to that. One is that they're really usually very specific, and you need to be early decider and like opt in pretty early in your academic pathway and follow the right classes. They're highly structured, very specific courses, and you must plan, because otherwise there's usually very little flexibility in those programs. Like if you took the wrong history course, you're going back to take the right history course, because there's little flexibility in these programs. But they benefit students in the fact that you get out faster, and it's integrated, and it's one straight line from bachelor's degree and credential all the way completed. We have a pathway at Santa Ana College that leads to Cal State Fullerton's integrated program in special education. So if you're at SAC, or if you're interested in SAC's program, you can talk with me about that as well. At Santa Ana College, we also have a pathway for students who want to go to Chapman University. We've just announced a transfer admission guarantee with students who are at our community college and Santiago Community College, Santiago Canyon Community College, with the transfer guarantee to Chapman University's Integrated Educational Studies program, and there's scholarships that are attached to that as well. We have a program for future math teachers as well at Santa Ana College, preparing students who want to teach math and getting a scholarship through the Noyce Scholarship Program at Cal State Fullerton. Some information on teacher salaries I wanted to share as we kind of wind down things, and I'll leave some time for questions. So because I think it's important to understand, our profession, not only what the requirements are, or what kind of the outcomes in terms of your job and what that will look like. So these are starting salaries in districts in Orange County, and I share multiple districts because they're not all the same, because each district gets to negotiate, has the flexibility to negotiate with their teachers unions to see how much the teachers are going to be getting paid, and that's typically done on a contract, and it's done either 1 year, 2 year, 3 years at a time. And you can see there's a little bit different there. So we have 2 columns. One is the starting salary, and then the last column there says the highest salary. And then on most salary schedules, if you haven't seen them, there's lots of different columns in between. So the starting salary is where you would start when you come out of the credential program with your preliminary credential, and you're starting that job. That's where the starting salary is. And then the highest salary is really based on towards the last column, which is based on years of experience as well as education. So as teachers, it is economically beneficial to your career to continue on to get professional development and getting advanced degrees, whether it's a master's degree, whether it's a doctorate degree, because one, you become a better teacher because you're learning more, but also you're compensated at a higher rate. So a teacher who has a master's degree in teaching 3rd grade in one classroom is getting paid more than the teacher who is in the classroom next to him or her teaching 3rd grade, but only has the credential. So there's an economic benefit because there's this assumption that because you have an advanced degree that you have, you invested more in your education, so you get compensated at a higher rate. So important to factor. This is a slide that talks about all the different across the spectrum between preschool all the way through CTE teachers and high school teachers. So this is a range in Orange County specifically. So you can take a look and see kind of what the median hourly earnings are, average annual earnings for difference at teaching at different levels. Sadly, This first column here is for preschool teachers. And unfortunately, as a society, we don't really invest enough or value enough early education teachers. And so, as you can see at the beginning, pay rate is, still pretty low compared to other occupations, and the responsibility of investing in the lives of children. So, and it's definitely comparably different than an elementary school teacher. So it's like half of what an elementary school teacher makes, unfortunately. But again, I always tell my students, you're not going to get rich. This isn't a job where, we're going to get stock options and private planes and flying, to China to do, big technology deals and making all kinds of money. We're really going to really make a difference in the lives of humans. We're investing in the lives of humans, in our society, in families, and trying to really make a difference. So that's the social emotional salary that we get as educators. And I can tell you, it's as doing this for as long as I have, it's definitely worth it in terms of the investment that I've made in terms of my career and the return, emotionally and satisfaction wise. Some resources for future teachers. Our center, there's all of us and the work that we do at our center at Santa Ana College. So maybe your school has a similar services or centers or programs. We definitely encourage you to plug in if you haven't. Find your teacher education program, find your people at your community college, and get on board to get connected with all of their activities and services. This is all of our social media how we communicate with our students. Jobs, we are highly encouraging our students to get jobs if they can in a K-12 setting, in an after school setting, as an instructional assistant, because that is invaluable experience to someone who's on a pathway, because you begin to build your repertoire of skills, build your contacts, your networking, and just get great experiences. And here's a couple areas, a couple employers in our areas that offer jobs. So definitely take a look. I think Together is all over California. Boys and Girls Clubs are all over California as well. So look in your local area if you're not in Orange County. EdJoin is the place where you look for all jobs, everything from, again, extended learning, after school programs, to principal, to teacher, to everything in education is typically on EdJoin. So you can sort by county, sort by position, all those kinds of things. This is Cal State Fullerton, our local partner. This is their website. They have a College of Education and the Center for Careers and Teaching. They have a lot of good resources there. So maybe if you're going to Fullerton, take a look at their program there. If you're going to your universities, at other universities, see if they have similar websites. This is the commission's website, the State Commission on Teacher Credentialing. So this is where you would find the forms, as I was sharing with you about downloading the form to get the permit. This is where you do all that. This is where you could get information on all the requirements for out of state prepared teachers or out of country prepared teachers. All that stuff is on this website, so you can definitely take a look there. This website is the testing website for the CBEST and the CSET, and the other tests that you would need and eventually end up taking possibly. So this is where you register for those tests. This is where you can download the practice tests, where you can view the specifications, where you register for the test. All those kinds of things happen through this website as well. So I encourage you to take a look sooner rather than later. This is an invitation to you. So if you want to learn more, I know you're doing the Teach LA series already. If you want to have another experience or an additional experience, we have a Road to Teaching conference that is happening not this weekend, but the following weekend through Santa Ana College. It's a virtual conference. It has really wonderful speakers, and our speakers are really going to be K-12 teachers primarily, who will provide a lot of their tips and skills and insights and all these things about becoming a teacher today. And so we invite you to take a look at our website. We have an amazing keynote speaker in Dr. Jeff Duncan Andrade, who's done so much work in the areas of critical pedagogy, working with families and communities, in the areas of critical hope and how educators are significant factors in offering hope to our students. So he'll be offering the keynote, and registration is now open for that. Our college, I'm not sure if your college does, but our college has multiple opportunities for students to get engaged with other students. We have a Future Teachers Club and a student chapter of SCTA, which is the Student California Teachers Association. And so if your school doesn't have a chapter, you can start one. We'd be happy to talk with you about that, but it's a really rich experience, a way to connect with other future educators on your campus, to get involved, to do some significant activities, and to learn more about the profession. Sarah is our club advisor, and they do a lot of really cool stuff, and they're winning because they were two-time Club of Champions of the Year at Santa Ana College for the past 2 years. And then we have a textbook loan program at Santa Ana College through our program. If you want to borrow textbooks, we let you borrow them for the semester. So that's another perk from Santa Ana College. And then, yeah, I think I've reached the end there. And I think I have 10 minutes left for questions. I know that was a ton of information. I apologize. There's no interactive way to do all of that, but I'm hoping that you got a lot of rich content out of that and you were able to learn a little bit more about the pathways for your specific area. And it is sometimes challenging and confusing to understand. So hearing it multiple times or hearing about it and reading about it, like in the materials that we provided, sometimes is a reinforcer as well. And then hopefully you'll meet with a counselor to really talk about your own specific goals and dreams and how we would map this for you to become a teacher. So
we do have one question in the chat. And that was, so you talked a little bit about teacher salary. Can you give us more information about retirement for teachers and earning money that way?
Right, yeah. So the teacher retirement system it's called STRS in California, the State Teachers Retirement System. And so it is considered a defined benefit program so that when teachers retire, when you're working as a teacher, you're paying into the system, the State Teachers Retirement System. But when you retire as a teacher, just like when you retire as a fireman or a police officer, sometimes a lot of employees, that your benefit is defined. It's based on how many years of experience that you've been working in that field and the highest salary at the time when you retire, or your highest salary during your employment. So for example, let's say my highest salary and I work in Santa Unified, I finished my career at 114,555, right? So that was the ending salary that I left with because I have a doctorate and I worked for 25 or 30 years in the district and I retire. That 25 to 30 years calculates into a percentage of that dollar amount. So, for a lot of teachers, that percentage gets up to like 80, 90, something's at 100%. So some teachers can retire at 100% of the last annual salary. So basically, they stop working and they continue to receive their salary in retirement until they die. And so that's one of the major benefits for teaching and other state employees who have these defined benefit programs that because you're doing work that you may not have the same capacity to earn and get stock options or any of those kinds of things as a public company, there's a defined benefit program that allows you to live comfortably in retirement based on the salary and the investment that you put into your employment as a state employee. So there's actually a website called STRS. If you go to STRS, you can actually, there's a retirement calculator that you could put in your age, when you started teaching, how many years you're teaching, estimated salary when you're done, and then what your retirement benefit would be. Anything else? Other questions? Thank you, Sarah, for putting that into the chat. Well, thank you I'll stick around for maybe 10 minutes or so in the chat. I have another meeting at 2:30, but I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes. But really thank you for attending today, for participating, and for your questions. It sounds like it was helpful to you. Use all the documents that we share with you in the Google Drive. Communicate with your community college's teacher prep program or wherever you're at to get access to the resources that you might need to support you. So again, thanks for coming today and participating in the event, and take advantage of the other workshops that are happening through Teach LA. They're doing a lot of really good stuff. So yeah, thank you for coming. Thank you, Tanisha. Thank you, Sarah, for your help.
Welcome.
How many did we end up getting into the room at the same time?
I think it peaked at 40 participants, not including the three of us.
Okay, great. And then I will upload, oh shoot,